What are some harmless ways to fuck with people? My dad used to have this game with a friend. They embarrassed me endlessly when I was a teen, but that was a bonus. Basically, when they were walking in the street, whenever they were passing someone, they would say things like, "Remember, when you pushed your mother-in-law down the stairs?" Or, "I mean, it wasn't that much drug, usually I carry way more than that." Or, "Where did you hide the knife after stabbing him?" You get the idea, anything absolutely awful, as if they were having an entire conversation about drugs, murder, whatever. My dad and his friend had the whole hippie look as well, so innocent passersby would quickly cross the street. So I have been setting this prank up for about 3 weeks now, but unfortunately the fruits of my labor came to fruition yesterday. All for the best, I guess. Background: my wife and I are very healthy and we eat the same thing for breakfast every day, well maybe a solid 350 days a year. It is egg whites and toast. It has got to the point that if I don't eat this for breakfast, my entire day feels off. I put salsa on my eggs while she uses ketchup, and she has to have ketchup or else she will not eat breakfast. We have a backup bottle or two in the pantry, just in case she runs out. 3 weeks ago, I noticed that her bottle is running pretty low and she has to actively shake the bottle to get the last remnants out. We are pretty earth-conscious as well, so nothing goes to waste, use until the last drop. There is still just enough left in the bottle that I can tell she is thinking that she shouldn't recycle it just yet and puts it back into the fridge. I notice this thought process going on in her head and decide I should mess with her. Once we finish up breakfast, she goes to get ready. I take one of the full bottles of ketchup and add just enough to the almost empty bottle so that she will have the amount needed for breakfast the next day. Breakfast the next day rolls around and she does the same thing, adds ketchup to her breakfast and decides there is just enough to save and puts it back in the fridge. I again refill the bottle with just enough for the next day. I should also mention that she is short. I hid the refill bottle at the top of the pantry so she could not see that it had been opened and used. 2 weeks ago, after 7 days slyly watching her add ketchup to her breakfast, I can begin to see an intrigued look on her face when she is prepping her breakfast. She doesn't say anything, but you can tell she has taken notice of the bottle. This goes on for another 7 days. 1 week ago, breakfast continues to go off without a hitch, and every time she adds the ketchup to her breakfast she gets a little twinkle in her eye, like she really wants to say something about it. But doesn't want me to make fun of her being crazy and thinking the ketchup bottle is never ending. To the point that she will look at me, start to say something, and then stop herself, change the subject, and put the bottle away. I have never looked forward to breakfast so much in my entire life. All this week, she is on the verge of saying something every day. It's becoming hard to not laugh while watching her add the ketchup to her eggs, but I am laughing hysterically on the inside. At this point, I have used roughly a half bottle of ketchup, refilling the other one. Yesterday, she adds ketchup to her breakfast and looks me directly in the eye and dead serious says, "We have a fucking magical ketchup bottle." I could not control my laughter and proceed to lose my shit while she tries to explain to me how she has used the exact same bottle of ketchup for 3 weeks and it has been almost empty the entire time. She now thinks I am laughing because of her belief in magic, and she is trying as hard as possible to convince me that she is serious and that is magic. I proceed to go into the pantry, take out the half-empty bottle of ketchup and place it on the counter. It all finally clicks in her head, and at that moment the empty ketchup bottle clicked into my head, but don't care because I made a magic ketchup bottle happen, so I am essentially Jesus. TLDR made my wife believe we had a magic ketchup bottle, but it hurt just as much as normal bottle when flung at my face. Oh man, do I have a story. In my freshman year of college, my roommate was a very neat and orderly person. He had every pencil in place, every paper had a folder, and his things got neatly packed away. We were pretty amicable towards one another, even with my messy living. At first, when he would leave for classes, I would admire how tidy his desk was and thought to myself I should fuck with that. For the whole year we lived together I would sneak used staples everywhere on his stuff. Homework folder? Staple. Pencil case? Staple. Backpack? Staple. Shower caddy? You bet that pube-infested bar of soap got a staple on it. Hell, even the TV remote got a staple in it between the batteries, so when they died he would eventually find another. I did it often, but was careful to space the staple events far enough apart to not raise suspicion on myself. I further protected myself by making a huge deal of having to borrow the across-the-hall neighbor's stapler whenever I needed to bind papers together. About March of our second semester, he had become insanely suspicious of anybody with a stapler and watched them like a hawk. The straw that broke the camel's back, I had asked him one night what his plans were under the guise of having a companion over for a visit. He said after dinner he had to go check out some obscure book at the library. When he left and headed to the dining hall, I snuck off to the library, found the obscure book he needed, and clicked a staple into it. He gets back to the dorm room and I'm doing homework in the same spot when he had left an hour earlier, claiming the meetup didn't end up happening. He sits down at his desk and opens up his newly rented book and I hear that staple fall out onto his desk. All I hear after that is where the fuck all these goddamn staples coming from? I revealed myself after graduation when I mailed him a birthday card with a used staple in it. Thankfully, he got the biggest kick out of the card and we still talk daily. TLDR, I put used staples in, on, and around my roommate's things. I put a tiny piece of masking tape over my coworker's mouse laser on April Fool's Day one year, wrote April Fool's on it. He troubleshot every single thing except examining the mouse. He eventually called IT, who simply turned the mouse over and pointed it out to him. I know someone who always takes an item to a party and leaves it somewhere in the house, i.e. a trinket/tchotchke. We did this to a friend. I noticed when she bought her house, she had some prints in her kitchen of lemons, 2 prints. That was all I needed. I went to a charity shop and bought maybe 20 cheap picture frames, then googled lemon art and printed them in color at work. My friend's birthday. We were outdoors, and it began to rain, and the plan was to go to her house. I made my excuses and hopped in a taxi home to drop off my stuff and to pick up a literal box of lemon pictures. We coordinated. My friend let me in. And I began ninja ing through her house, dropping and hanging lemon pictures throughout her house. Sneaking into a crowded room and this is the piece de resistance, setting up a photo of her, delightedly holding an armful of lemon and limes my friend had taken weeks before. And then, we wait. At a later point in the night I bumped into someone I'd never met before, and he said in a hushed tone, "Have you noticed she seems to be obsessed with lemons?" And I had to admit, conspiratorially, that was something that had piqued my curiosity too. Practically every room in her house was partially lemon-themed. That's my fave prank I ever pulled off. When I was a corrections officer, we had a guy who worked with us who was kind of a dick to everyone, and he was computer illiterate. We took a screenshot of his desktop and moved all of his icons off of it so it looked legit, but nothing worked. It took him an hour before he finally called IT, and they figured it out pretty quickly. He wouldn't talk to any of us for about a week. My neighbor got an expensive new camera for his front door. Randomly, for the last several months, I have covered myself in a black cloak, including face, crawled up into camera view, and left a random harmless object. A carrot, spool of thread. 3 ink pens with the caps mixed up, dumb meaningless things. On camera, a dark shape appears and disappears, leaving a random object behind. It is driving his silly ass crazy. I was talking with a supervisor and I happened to have like 4 hard-boiled eggs in my jacket pocket for lunch. So while talking with stuff, I took out an egg, cracked and shelled it and ate it. The conversation kept going so I did it again, but I could see he was growing quizzical. I waited a few more minutes, pulled out another, and ate that too. By then I could tell he was like WTF. The conversation was wrapping up, so I pulled the last one out, and he stopped mid-conversation and asked me, "How many eggs do you have?" I just shrugged, shelled, and then ate the last egg. Call one of those "How's my driving" bumper sticker numbers and let them know that their driving is wonderful. I've done that. One of my favorite driving stories. A guy I was driving behind in bad traffic was being a super calm traffic buddy. Driving very relaxed, not tailgating, confident but not a pushover. I was behind him directly for a while, then we got separate, then I was behind him again and realized I liked following him because he was less herky-jerky to follow in the slow and go traffic. I was bored so I called the number. They were very confused. I had to reiterate a bunch of times I was calling to report a good driver. He hadn't done anything amazing, but the company on the pickup seemed like a hard job for mediocre pay and I figured he could use a kindness. A half hour later, we came upon the reason for the traffic. A really awful merge in a construction zone had bad signage and even worse coneage and street conditions. The lane-ending sign referred to the wrong lane. So a lot of responsible early mergers were then stuck in a lane that ended abruptly at a cliff. I was one of them. The traffic in the through lane was too fast and flowing for us to get in. Any gaps were filled by folks behind us merging into it while they were still moving. It was too congested for any of us to safely get in, and a good 5 to 7 of us were stopped cold for minutes and stressed because we were constantly trying to time an entry. 1 or 2 in fast cars would risk it and cause dangerous braking, so that didn't seem wise. Then, from a ways back, who do we see slowly coming into focus from around a curve? Good driver guy. He was coasting steadily but was slowed way down versus those he was following, and he had left enough of a gap that we could slide in front of him. This space and speed buffer had single-handedly slowed the pack enough to make the zipper merge start to work behind him so that no one else would get stuck for a while. My wife and I started losing our shit. No fucking way. It's how's my driving guy. We had reported him as an excellent driver in a phone call that heavily exaggerated his heroism, and then he went on to actually save the day. Great moment. When having a conversation with someone, just start handing them anything within reach. You have to be subtle, like grab the thing, hold onto it for a while without acknowledging it, maintain normal eye contact, then hand it to them while they're talking. I love doing that. The victim usually ends up taking what's offered and holding onto it until they finish their thought and they're like, "Why did you give me this? You know, why'd you take it?" Tee. Mail them a flip-flop or a tortilla. No package box, just stamps directly on it, no return address. Don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. User Reddit out.